welcome everybody to today's presentation. This is being recorded, and that said, we do want to encourage as much participation as we can, so feel free to use the chat panels, and there is already a polling question up if you haven't answered that already. We're going to jump right to the answers right now. So we've got a pretty aggressive agenda with some great speakers, and really wanted to talk about this challenge and opportunity of integration, specifically for Salesforce.com customers. So we wanted to find out, how many systems are you integrating today? So a lot of organizations start with Salesforce, and they push out integration into some further or later stage of the implementation. A lot of organizations are integrating Salesforce with their databases. Some have already started the back office integration, so with ERP systems like SAP and Oracle. And in others, typically in larger organizations, you have a multiple set of connectivity around your Salesforce implementation, and you might already be embarking on a master data management type of strategy for your company. So let's see what people's responses were. We had really kind of a larger percentage doing nothing yet. So this will be a good chance for you to hear how to start. Nobody has said they're doing ERP. Maybe that's something you're moving towards, and quite a few people did not answer. So let's talk about today's the goals of today's presentation. So really the objective is to help you gain some insight into the benefits of data integration, specifically around your Salesforce.com and Force.com implementation. The second is to help give you some ideas to help you learn how do you get started with integration. We're seeing more and more organizations are successful with their CRM and cloud platform rollouts when they think through integration very early on in the project. And then lastly, we're going to provide you with an overview of Informatica Cloud, which has really become a top choice for Salesforce customers. Informatica Cloud has been recognized 3 years in a row by Salesforce customers as the #1 solution on the App Exchange, something we're very proud of. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Andrew Bartels from PSA Insurance and Financial Services. And Andrew, the floor is yours. So you can introduce yourself, and let's talk about what happened around your Salesforce experiences and integration at PSA.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Darren. Again, my name is Andrew Bartels. I'm Director of IT for PSA Financial and Insurance and Financial Services in Baltimore, Maryland. We actually had a very, very good experience with implementing Salesforce and integrating it with our back-end agency management system. A little bit about PSA. We're a diversified insurance and financial services provider. Let me just change this. Located in Hunt Valley, Maryland, which is just north of Baltimore. And we have a number of practice areas. We have P&C insurance, employee benefits, consulting, retirement plan services, and wealth management. And we do about $30 million a year, and we have about 150 associates. The normal industry model within our community is that a business owner or an executive within an organization is faced with a set of challenges day to day. He needs to make decisions for his organization. And in the traditional model, what happens is he really deals with different brokers, different consultants, different experts. And a lot of the time, he may actually get conflicting answers. And so at PSA, we really try and provide a one-stop shop. And we see that as our differentiator, because when you come to PSA, you really have the opportunity to sit at a table with experts from all of our different practices. And this, as you can imagine, is extremely helpful for a business executive, because instead of receiving conflicting advice, he's actually able to sit at a table with individuals that understand his entire risk profile. So we really see that as a big differentiator. The reality for PSA is, though, that we've grown primarily through acquisition over the years. And as a result, as you can see here, we really have multiple silos of transactional data, because ultimately at the end of the day, each practice is a specialized business, and you need those transactional systems on the back end to be able to actually service your customers. The problem, though, is that even though all that is good, critical customer information was really hard, hidden or difficult to access, or somebody had to go out and actually request a report from one of our operations folks. And a lot of times when, especially with producers, when they're out in the field, they're trying to focus on their clients. This is something that's very difficult. It takes a lot of time, coordination, and it's just difficult to get that information. So we really wanted to put together a system that could really enhance our producers' visibility into the existing client relationships that we had. We also wanted a system that we could easily create measurable campaigns in, and we wanted to identify what is really the Holy Grail of our business, which is cross-sell opportunities, both at the practice level and at the account rounding level. And we wanted to make sure that we had the tool set available to us that we could effectively target market both prospects and existing clients with the right products and services. In addition to that, because we're a multi-practice environment with a lot of history, we also needed a system that could handle our complex account and remuneration logic, which exists both on paper and in our back-end agency management systems. And to do that, to translate something that a lot of the time is negotiated across a table into a system can be extremely complex and challenging. A little bit of history about Salesforce and PSA. Salesforce has actually been implemented twice at PSA. The first time in 2009, it was implemented as a standalone CRM, and the result of that was very, very low levels of adoption. We ran into all sorts of issues where data was inaccurate, where data was uploaded once, and it just didn't jive with the back-end system, and as a result, a lot of our producers really didn't trust the information in the system. And so, long story short, it really didn't work out all that well. So we took another run at it again in 2011, this year, and we really put a lot of thought into it. We spent about 6 months really thinking about how we needed to do this so that this time we got it right. And I'm happy to say that this time we did get it right. And, you know, in the context of this call, I can't emphasize enough how important integrating Salesforce bidirectionally with our back-end agency management system, AMS 360, was to the success of this project. Because currently our system, what we call PSA Force, we rebranded it for use within our organization, is currently used by 61 of our associates every day. And it really is integrated into the day-to-day workflows across the business practices. So what I mean by that is that the workflows don't just end in Salesforce. The workflows that have been designed using Informatica Cloud, Salesforce, and the web services suite that's available for our back-end agency management system, those workflows flow across our entire organization. So we really needed, when we went looking for an integration solution, we realized that in order to make our Salesforce implementation work, we really needed an integration tool set that could handle the complexities of our organization. But on top of that, we really needed something that was flexible, that was scalable, and was reliable, because ultimately at the end of the day, if people are going to trust the information in a system like Salesforce, especially given our history of the first time we did it, we really had to be certain that the data that was brought into Salesforce from our back-end systems was accurate. And if there was ever a time where there were errors or there was the inability to synchronize the data, we had to know about it quickly. So we looked at a number of solutions that are out there, and ultimately we chose Informatica Cloud. We really can't emphasize enough how much success we've had with this product, because ultimately, if something breaks, it puts the entire adoption curve at risk. So really had a lot of success there. As a business, we really tried to become cloud first. So whenever we look at a new solution, we take into account scalability, business continuity, and disaster recovery. And as an organization, we already have a number of systems that are in the cloud, including compliance we do in the cloud as regards to email, we do business intelligence in the cloud, we do disaster recovery in the cloud, and we do backup to the cloud. So really the whole concept of the cloud as a functional production infrastructure, we were very, very comfortable with that. And everything that we've done so far with Salesforce and Informatica Cloud have only gone on to strengthen our belief that this is the right solution for our organization.
Hey, Andrew, we have a question, mainly a couple of slides back, but as you chose Informatica Cloud, were there other solutions you evaluated or reviewed before making that selection? How did you go about making the selection for Informatica?
Well, I'll be honest. We looked at a number of solutions. We also looked at I don't know if I should be mentioning competitors, but we also looked very strongly at a number of cloud-based solutions, alternative cloud-based solutions. One of them that we looked at was Pervasive, that has a very strong relationship with Microsoft. But ultimately, at the end of the day, our decision points came down to the following. We wanted a solution that had a track record. And Informatica and Informatica Cloud really is a child of Informatica Power Center. And when you look at the history of Informatica, this is a product that traditionally has been used for a long time by Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies. And the beauty of this is that with Informatica Cloud, we get to actually leverage that history, that reliability, packaged in such a way that a company like ourselves, who's obviously much smaller than a Fortune 500 or Fortune 100, can leverage that same kind of power. In addition to that, we really wanted a product that had a very low footprint. So in terms of our objectives of going out and looking at different infrastructure requirements and requirements within our data center, implementing Informatica Cloud was as simple as downloading and installing an agent on a server inside our firewall. So we never had to make any adjustments to our firewall. We never had to make any adjustments to our security arrangements. It was simple as installing it and connecting it to the various data sources that we needed to do, one of those data sources being Salesforce. So ultimately, at the end of the day, after looking at the alternatives out there, we really decided that Informatica, given its pedigree, given its history, and given its ease of implementation and its low impact on our existing infrastructure, this was the one we decided to go to. And I think the other point was that at the same time, we were also looking at various partners to help us implement this solution. And that's in our discussions with Silverline CRM out of New York, it really became extremely obvious that given their experience, both within our vertical and within other verticals, they'd had a tremendous amount of success implementing the type of solution that we were looking to implement using Informatica Cloud. I know we have Gadeesh on it from Silverline on the line with us. I mean, do you have any insights, Gadeesh, into Informatica over alternative solutions?
No, I think you've hit the high points in terms of what you looked at. I mean, I think what's important is that we also looked at the streamlined ability to get this thing in place and reviewed your infrastructure and your sort of system architecture or landscape and said what would fit in the easiest and sort of snap in the best considering the types of applications you already had. I think on the slide you're showing now, you're indicating we've got a SQL database, web services connectors, a couple different things going on, and the way that the Informatica Cloud's connector methodology hooked in, I think, was really kind of the easiest fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think it would be worth mentioning that there was quite a lot of complex logic that we had to implement, especially in terms of ownership of accounts and how revenue from opportunities was split up. And a lot of that information resided in our back-end agency management system and in other systems, which we actually had to bring that logic into Salesforce, and Informatica made a lot of that possible and relatively easy to do, to achieve.
Great.
So, moving right along, One of the objectives of our organization is to maximize cross-sell. I think anybody that is in the insurance brokerage market in any way, shape, or form understands that if you can cross-sell your existing customers both at a practice and a line of business level, you're going to be very, very successful. And there was a recognition within PSA that we really didn't have more than 10 or 15% of our customer base cross-sold. And we felt one of the challenges that was preventing us from driving that number up was our ability to quickly and easily put that information, that opportunity information, in the hands of our producers that were in front of the client. I mean, yes, it was available, and yes, you could go to accounting, or you could go to finance, or you could go to operations people, but ultimately they would present you with spreadsheet-based data, which the moment that the spreadsheet was generated, it became outdated. And so by deploying Informatica Cloud and Salesforce and actually bringing this data in 15-minute increments into our Salesforce org, we were putting the power of identifying potential cross-sell opportunities in the hands of the people that needed the most, which was basically our frontline producers. So I think if everybody can see this integration work example 1, I think a picture is really worth 1,000 words, and maybe more than 1,000 words in this particular example. But what we have up on the screen is actually a screenshot of a personal lines policy that we have within Salesforce. And what you can see highlighted here is you're seeing that there is the policy information, and of course all of those links within the policy information are drillable. So you can actually drill down from the policy number into the underlying basic policy information. Below that, you have a tab, AMS Activities. And anybody that, again, is in the insurance brokerage business knows how important it is for people to be able to document any activity in the system. But what's critical to understand here is that these AMS activities are actually being brought into Salesforce from our back-end agency management system. So that in terms of visibility for a producer, he can actually go in to call up an important client and actually see AMS activities that are being logged in the back-end agency management system right there in Salesforce. In addition to that, one of the things that was very, very important to our producers was that any activities that they logged in Salesforce when they interacted with the client, that those activities in turn were pushed back into the agency management system. Because the reality is within our business, the agency management system, AMS 360, is our system of record. And so they wanted to make sure that if they spoke to a client on the phone, if they sent an email, if they set a task, they set an event in Salesforce, there was no duplication required. So in other words, that data would simply flow through the synchronization, through Informatica Cloud, and into the back-end agency management system. And using Salesforce and its API set along with the integration with Informatica Cloud, we were able to make this happen. And there's no doubt that giving our producers the comfort of being able to do that definitely has driven adoption. Hope everybody can see the next screenshot, which is integration work example 2. And what I wanted to draw your attention to here was the fact that there you can see right at the top of an account in Salesforce, we are describing revenue information associated with this client. And as you can see, that when it comes to looking for cross-sell opportunities, when it comes to looking for white space, this is a very easy way for a producer to eyeball an account and very quickly understand where the revenue for that client is coming from, and therefore where the opportunities are for them to chase with the client. In addition to that, within our system, it's very easy to add somebody to a cross-sell team and invite a specialist from another department in on a deal. And it really just, so you can see, you go from, wow, I see that this is a potential opportunity for a practice that we don't currently have revenue with. Let me invite a specialist from that department that I work well with, And you can see how that just initiates the whole process, which ultimately is the holy grail of the insurance sales business. So what did we learn from this? One of the things that we really learned as we went through the implementation was that it's very, very important to position Salesforce as a partner. What we learned from our first failed implementation was that if all you expect Salesforce to be is a repository for your producers, for your users to inject information in, it's very, very quickly going to be seen as extra work and not very functional. But if you position Salesforce as a partner, and by partner I mean that it provides information to those users that they didn't have access to before, people very quickly begin to understand the benefits. And the reality is that that's where integration is absolutely key to the adoption of the product. The other thing that we learned was how resilient Informatica Cloud is. In fact, I would go as far as to say that the only time that we've seen errors or we've seen downtime has actually been when Salesforce has gone down. Not that Salesforce goes down out of sequence, but when they've gone down as a result of an upgrade, you immediately start getting tickets opening in our help desk from Informatica Cloud saying it does not have the ability to connect to Salesforce. And this has only happened once, and it was on a weekend at night when Salesforce was implementing a large upgrade. So it really proved itself to be extremely resilient, and that's very, very important to us because it really drives adoption. It's really proved itself to be able to handle our automated complexity. We really have a very complex ownership structure around accounts and opportunities, and there was a lot of concern early on whether or not the system would actually be able to accurately represent that ownership structure. And the combination of the functionality of Salesforce and Informatica Cloud really made that possible, and again, really drives adoption of the system because our producers and our users really understand that for the first time they have day-to-day visibility into their potential future revenue streams. And the other thing that we learned was that it's critical to make sure that the workflows that you design are cross-platform. If a workflow begins and ends only in one system, unfortunately it opens up opportunities for people to not use the system to go around the system. And we truly believe that by designing cross-platform workflows involving both Salesforce and our back-end agency management system, we really have driven up adoption levels, which is, from an implementation point of view, really where you want to be. It's provided, from a benefit point of view, much greater visibility into the data. It's really given our producers the power to go and create cross-sell campaigns based on client data, and it's really opened up our visibility and ability to forecast new revenues that are coming down the track. You know, I think everything that I've said, though, ultimately is backed up by this quote from our managing director, Chip Lewis, and I'll just read the part in red, which is, for us, having our information in such a reportable and accessible fashion is the Holy Grail. And he's really emphasizing and mirroring what I've just been saying. To have this kind of 360-degree visibility into the relationships that we have in place with our clients has really been golden. So,
hey, quick question for you, Andrew.
Shoot.
This is a great overview, but specifically before even the integration piece, and you mentioned you had gone through two implementations of Salesforce. So the specific question is, prior to implementing Informatica Cloud and Salesforce, did PSA have its own CRM system? And if it did have CRM, what changes did you have to go through to migrate to Salesforce?
We didn't. I would say that our CRM system prior to Salesforce consisted of Microsoft Outlook. I think there were probably a few producers that came on board through various acquisitions with tools like ACT and Goldmine. And in terms of converting that kind of data, first of all, on the Outlook front, Salesforce integrates very nicely with Outlook. So in terms of getting contacts into Salesforce, that was extremely easy, whether you did it manually and imported it or you utilized the Salesforce connector for Outlook. On both the ACT side and the Goldmine side, both of those systems provide the functionality to be able to export their data to CSV format. And from there, it's relatively simple to import and map the information in Goldmine and ACT to the applicable fields in Salesforce where need be. So really not a big issue.
A couple other questions. One is specific to some of your metrics. You said 61 out of 130 associates is less than 50%. Why is that good?
I guess I should sort of reiterate something. All of our users within the organization have access to paid chatter. So there's two forms of chatter. There's a Salesforce chatter, which is free, and there's a paid chatter. And paid chatter gives you access to accounts and contacts. So I have to say that from an access to Salesforce point of view, and access to the Salesforce platform, all of our employees have access to the product. The 61, which is actually 69 today, have access to the full Sales Cloud application. And that really means that they have access to the opportunity object, because that's where they spend a tremendous amount of their time. But from a collaboration point of view, from a communication point of view, from an access to all accounts in the system, to all contacts in the system, as well as to chatter, as well as to custom objects, all of our users within the organization have access to Salesforce. And I can't emphasize enough how having everybody within the same system being able to use chatter to communicate, whether that be an example that we're doing today, where we're going through an acquisition and we've created a chatter group, and gives us the ability to bring all the applicable parties into that chatter group and to communicate basically in real time, extremely powerful. So maybe I didn't make that clear. We do have some form of Salesforce wall-to-wall across PSA.
No, that's great, and yeah, good plug for chatter. It's fantastic. Okay, so let's keep going, because there's some questions coming in specifically about Informatica Cloud, and I think Mark will address them when we get to the demo towards the end of the presentation.
Okay, fantastic. Well, what's next? We're really looking at integrating using Informatica Cloud to integrate Benefit Point, which is the application that our benefits department use. I should emphasize that Benefit Point already integrates with AMS 360, which integrates with Salesforce. So a lot of information that is in Benefit Point is already coming in, and we're very interested, especially at integrating the case management aspects of Benefit Point and making that available to our full Salesforce users through integration using Informatica Cloud. We also have a wealth management division. We currently use a product called Advent Access, and we're very interested in replacing our existing CRM that's utilized by wealth management folks with Salesforce, and we envisage using Informatica Cloud to achieve this. In addition to that, we're looking at various opportunities to integrate Salesforce with some of our strategic partners, and the challenge there is you're not quite sure what they have. So Informatica gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility in order to be able to achieve that. I just want to end really with a bit of advice, and that is that make sure that you have a good partner. Our partner with Silverline CRM. I think one of the challenges with an implementation like this is that, as I emphasized earlier, it's very, very easy to get up and running with Informatica Cloud. You literally download the agent and install it and connect it to your data sources. But I think a lot of the times that simplicity hides its complexity and its abilities. And I think that one of the things we definitely benefited from was really the experience and knowledge that Silverline brings to the table, especially when it came to translating a lot of the complexities that hadn't necessarily been designed with a system in mind, and making those complexities simple and making them available and functional within our Salesforce org. So, as it says, big shout out to Silverline, a huge factor behind, what has been an extremely successful implementation of Salesforce at PSA. And with that, I guess I should hand the baton over to Gadish Sonat from Silverline.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrew. It was a real pleasure working with you on that project, so I'm happy to get the shout-out. Much appreciated. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for being on today's webinar. My name is Gadish Sonad. I am a partner and co-founder of Silverline CRM, the implementer for the PSA project. A quick note about Silverline and who we are. We are a leader in Force.com and Salesforce.com implementations. with a very, very specific focus on financial services. It's important to know that we are a Salesforce-only implementation shop, so we don't look at other CRM systems or platforms. It's really just Salesforce.com and the Force.com platform. And even lower than that, so financial services focus in terms of industry and industry specialization. So we're headquartered in New York. We have customers throughout the U.S., but all of our primary delivery folks are here in New York. And we've got several hundred implementations behind us, and lots of the experience that Andrew talked about in the financial services and insurance space has come from these implementations over the past 5 or 6 years. Last year, we were happy to be ranked as the #1 corporate sales partner for Salesforce in the Northeast, and definitely a top 5 partner nationwide. So we've been seeing a lot of growth in the Salesforce space, even in special focus on financial services. We're about 40 people today, with about 16 consultants and about 19 developers. I think it's actually 21 developers now. What's important to note about that is that half our company is focused on the Force.com platform and understanding what it means to really stretch Salesforce or bend Salesforce to the different types of application workflows and business processes that we see. I think it's our approach, our philosophy is really one of end-to-end business process modeling and automation, not just CRM implementation. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about how that helped out in the PSA example as well. And so we like to think of ourselves as sort of the go-to partner for everything that's hard or different or interesting within the Force.com platform for that reason. So integration is core to a financial services implementation. I mean, financial services runs most of what it does off of data, and there's lots and lots of different types of data, different data sources, and they're all very much a part of the day-to-day business workflow of many of our customers. And what I'll put up in here is obviously in insurance, there are some big players that everybody knows about in terms of the data source providers or the systems that people are using today, and we've listed those here. But we've also successfully migrated or integrated bidirectionally with all of the systems that you see on this page here. So if you're trying to pull in capital markets data, you're trying to pull in just other CRM system data, or really your own legacy applications and legacy databases, it's important to note that pretty much no system is out of reach for integration, and you should really keep that in mind when thinking about your Salesforce implementation. Don't think that because a system is hard or because a system is out there that, we won't be able to pull that data in. There's usually a way that we can find to get the information out and make it really relevant to your Salesforce users as a part of that implementation. So in order to sort of bring some of Andrew's concepts into the specifics of the implementation and leveraging some of the experience that we've had from our previous integrations, I wanted to bring forward to you some do's and don'ts and things to think about when talking about a Salesforce.com implementation that includes integration. So we've split this up into a couple of concepts, do's and don'ts. So what absolutely to focus on when thinking about a Salesforce integration or implementation that contains integration. First and foremost, understand that this is a process this is a project that is focused or should be focused on process, not technology. It's extremely important to think about your process first, and the way to do that is to make sure you're bringing the right people into the room when you're talking about your implementation. So that core team, that core implementation team that you bring to help you, your core stakeholders on your Salesforce project should be cross-functional. They really should be at least one member from all the different areas of your internal teams. And I mean that from your producers, your marketing team, your sales team, your operations team, your IT team. Everybody's going to have something to give, and the more of that sort of input that can be brought to the table in terms of helping to design the application, design the system, is going to make for a better implementation going forward. I know this is a big reason why there was so much success at PSA, because they were able to bring those people to the table. And one thing that Silverline always does is really talk to our clients first before we ever come and do our initial kickoff meeting to make sure that you've got that well-rounded team. Andrew, I know that we talked a lot about how much value we got from the input from all the different sides of the team throughout the definition process of the project. I mean, I know you mentioned that earlier. Is there anything that you would like to add in that particular realm?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would add to it, Ganesh, and you saw this in our implementation, is that you can never really stretch too far. It doesn't mean that ultimately your core team shouldn't be focused, but I think that it's about going out and making sure that you include different stakeholders across your organization within various aspects of the implementation, because ultimately at the end of the day, if there's systems like this to be successful, you can't just involve management. You really have to involve the technicians within your organization, and I think initially in the more traditional implementations of technology that hasn't been taken into account, and I think that's what leads to the changes, the change orders after the fact. But if you really take the time to include your technicians in the back office, to include your producers, as well as obviously the primary stakeholders in management, I think ultimately you'll have a much, much better outcome, because initially from get-go, people will realize that they were involved in the creation of this product.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and in terms of adoption, I mean, that's a huge benefit to the adoption of the overall system, because people know that at least one member from their team or from their sort of specialization internally has had some input on the application that's being delivered to them. So clearly. Thanks. So now you've got that core team. Again, this is a process exercise first. I mean, for the most part, the technology is going to be able to do what you want to do. And as we've seen today, and Andrew has mentioned, the Informatica Cloud application really makes it easy. But it's really all about making sure you understand your process and you understand your data workflow. No amount of technology is going to be able to fix a process that isn't well understood or well defined or well documented. So paying attention to that is really going to help you get to where you need to be in terms of making sure that you have an implementation that's going to work for everyone and make sense and is easily adopted.
Yeah, I think, Girish, I couldn't emphasize that more. Just because Salesforce and Informatica are fantastic products, they're not going to fix a broken workflow. And we really took this opportunity, this implementation, to really study and understand how our workflows were working today on paper before we ever had any fingers on the keyboard. And I think in a lot of those cases, it exposed inefficiencies, which we were able to actually correct on the ground before we ever implemented them within Informatica Cloud and Salesforce. So incredibly important.
Yep, most definitely. So then a little bit, now that we've sort of understood the workflow a bit, from a technical point of view, it's important to now compare that process and that data workflow and those requirements that you have of your legacy application to the actual capabilities that they provide. I mean, in many cases, what we're finding is that it's the legacy application that holds the bottleneck or could be a potential issue with integration. So you really want to make sure you spend some time looking at that legacy application or the application you're integrating with and say, can you do this? Can you do that? What's the right mechanism for me to talk to you if I wanted to execute this type of a function? In the example of PSA, we actually did uncover a small piece of functionality that we wanted in the integration that wasn't available out of the box. So by identifying that early, right up front, we were able to say, okay, this is going to be a hole. We'll design around it, or we'll maybe build some custom code or whatever that is. But by paying special attention to what your legacy application can do before you get into throwing data at it is going to help you to sort of alleviate some of those potential pitfalls much earlier. From a nuts and bolts point of view, Salesforce and Informatica both have some really great native functionality when it comes to the mechanism of moving this data around. Something as simple as external IDs and making sure that you've got your ID maps correct from your legacy application in Salesforce makes it a huge difference in terms of figuring out who's the master, who has the most accurate piece of information, and how am I relating these systems back and forth. So Salesforce has that external ID functionality that you can set on fields, which lets you locate those records using somebody else's ID. In this case, we're locating account records in Salesforce using an AMS ID. The concept of upsert, so being able to do 2 or 3 steps in one time, so either updating or inserting a record within the same call from Informatica into Salesforce greatly streamlines your workflow from an integration point of view, and also helps you to keep your task set cleaner. So you don't have to have nearly as many tasks to do the same thing when you're using an upsert versus 2 or 3 separate tasks. And then finally, error logging, seems obvious, but it's a really useful tool. Salesforce and Informatica both have great error logging. Make sure you turn it all on because you're going to need it. You're going to want to look at it and understand what's going where at what time. And to that end, documenting what you build is another sort of one of those obvious things. And people think that, we'll do it at the end or whatever it is, but you need to make a clear indication of the decisions that are being made as you move through the integration. You'll be making some game time decisions, so an error will come up that you couldn't plan for, and so you'll change the integration because of that to make it work. You need to make sure that's documented because you're going to have to refer to it later. At some point in time, you're going to want to tweak that, everyone's going to want to know why that decision was made. So the documentation there is key. So before I get into the don'ts, I do want to make sure to mention we have a little bit of a snapshot there. The Informatica Cloud community has a lot of sort of best practices and tips and tricks in terms of how to do some of these things that we've talked about technically. We post on there from time to time. We actually put questions up there for the Informatica guys from time to time. So it's a good resource when you're going through the integration to really understand how you can get through a particular problem. So flipping into some things to be aware of or be careful of in an integration, a couple of don'ts. First and foremost, especially as in the context of this conversation, do not underestimate the value of integration to the overall adoption of your particular implementation. I mean, this is a huge, huge difference in terms of how well your users are gonna like the system that they go into the first day they log in. If they see their data and data from other systems that they're not used to seeing, it's going to make the stickiness factor of Salesforce much higher. It's going to make their excitement much higher about the system, and your adoption is most definitely going to go up. I just made a subnote here. Most often, your workflows in your company are completely cross-platform. They go from system to system to system. So your implementation should do the same thing, right? Your implementation should help them look across systems, and if Salesforce can be that central place, that central repository of information, then you're going to have that much better time getting them in the system and keeping them there.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, just to add in, we had an anecdotal story this morning where a producer was actually looking at an account in Salesforce and noticed there wasn't any revenue. Shot off an email, and it actually turns out that that client hasn't paid us. And, that is actually, that's before he would have seen that, on his commission statement. So he actually has the opportunity to proactively go out and discuss any issues that may exist with the client. So you can imagine the power that puts in a producer's hands, whereas before he probably potentially might have waited months to find out that the customer hasn't paid.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think the visibility that you bring with not only just with Salesforce itself, but with an integration to a legacy application, that is one of the core benefits that a lot of our customers always say when after the Salesforce implementation has happened, they've had a chance to look around. They can't believe. Just to Chip's quote from earlier on, they just can't believe how much data they're now able to see very easily. All right, so the next concept is don't ignore the value of writing actual use cases and really doing full end-to-end testing with not just the people in your core team, but bring in some of the folks that are going to be using the system. These are the people who are in the weeds with the data every day. They're going to be able to pick up on small, subtle changes or subtle issues that you weren't able to find, or maybe you looked over. Do end-to-end testing. Think of some real use cases that make sense to your organization. Run them through the gamut and let some people look at it and give you the sort of the sign off. It's a big benefit to making sure that it's polished when it really goes live. So a Salesforce technical issue. I mean, Salesforce gives you what's called a sandbox with certain additions, with certain higher level additions, or as an add-on, you can purchase what's called a full sandbox. A full sandbox is a complete mirror copy of your production environment that lets you store as much data as your production environment will. We recommend anyone who's doing an integration like an ongoing regular integration, and most definitely anyone who's doing a two-way integration, do not try this without a full sandbox. You absolutely need to have the ability to do a full run of integration between the systems. You cannot just try and do it with 10 records here or 10 records there. You really got to see the full gamut of the data in one place before you can really know that your integrations are working well. And then finally, just as kind of a snarky comment here, but don't worry, these integrations do all work. It gets a little detailed and a little bit down in the weeds, and can feel like it's a big job to get this data working together correctly, but it will work out. These integrations can be very, very successful, and as Andrew is showcasing today, can mean a big difference to your organization.
Great. Thank you, Girish. So let's, we've got about 10 minutes to before we wrap up. This is Darren. I just wanted to have everyone see Informatica Cloud in action. So we do have a YouTube channel. There's all kinds of places to go and see Informatica Cloud. You can register for a trial, as Andrew and Girish have mentioned. But let's just keep moving to quickly explain what is Informatica Cloud, and then I'm going to hand it over to Mark in the last 10 minutes to just walk you through a quick overview. So really, we've been established ourselves as really the industry's true first cloud-based integration service. We have a usage-based offering, and we have a mobile service. So really trying to continue to innovate and expand what's possible in the cloud with data integration. And how that works is when you visit Informatica Cloud, you go, there's on the top right of the page, you'll see the ability to sign up for a trial. And there you'll be prompted to download what we call our secure agent, which is really going to be the engine. And Andrew mentioned this is, in some degree, I believe the term you used was a child of Power Center or something like that. We're really leveraging the core engine of the market-leading Informatica technology as our secure agent. So that is doing all the heavy lifting, typically behind the firewall, but we see some customers doing that in the cloud as well. And then data, very importantly, data is moving bidirectionally to and from your source and your target. It could be used for on-premise, down-premise types of use cases, but more often than not, we've been doing a lot of Salesforce.com to an on-premise system. In this case, AMS 360 from a real specific insurance use case. So I'm going to hand it over to Mark to just show you Informatica Cloud in action and remind you, if you are listening today live on the call, which you all are at this point in time, you can ask Mark some questions, and we'll try to get to them as we jump in. So over to you, Mark.
Excellent. Thanks, Darren. And let me grab control. And can you guys see my desktop now?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So I'm going to start off in Salesforce today because we only have a couple of minutes. We're going to take that 5-minute challenge, and I'm going to implement some of the things Girish had just mentioned, some of the techniques, but we'll do it pretty quickly. Today, we're going to start off in Salesforce, but as Darren just told you, you don't have to. You can go to the cloud community site, the cloud Informatica Cloud site, log in, create an account, but you can also launch Informatica Cloud from within Salesforce, and that's what we're going to do. So today, in about 5 minutes, we're going to integrate accounts and policies, or clients and policies. And we'll see I have no data currently in my Salesforce. Now we got to get it in there so that our producers can actually start working on it and then capture that customer that's not paid. And we're going to do that in about 5 minutes. So let's jump into our integration tab, and it's going to single sign us on right into Informatica Cloud. And what's neat, you'll notice that it's tab-driven like a SaaS or Salesforce application, so it's really easy to navigate. And then you'll notice I've been working on different tasks today, and as Girish noted before about finding your errors, it's great to find the errors. And you could see I was actually working on a few things where I did find errors and progressively fixed them, right, until I got a perfect copy of what I wanted. So these are the things you'll be able to do and then do them on a recurring basis. But what we need to do is get that data in. So we're going to navigate over to our Data Services tab, and we're going to change our view around here a little bit so you'll see all the things I have. Lots of tasks, lots of use cases, but I want to now integrate account data or client data into Salesforce. So we're going to click New, and we're going to name our task in our 6-step wizard, and we're going to call it our Insurance Client Load 2. And then we're going to select Upsert, like Girish had mentioned before. This is going to help us simplify our tasks because we're going to use our internal identifiers from AMS, from Sajida, to identify records in Salesforce and then later link them. Our next step is to actually pick where that data is coming from. And in my case, I have data all over the place, and I have them named quite appropriately, and I want to find policy information. So there's my policy data. Now this just went across the internet and picked up my policy information, and I want to grab my client information because I need to load that first before I can load any policy information below it. And next we're going to go to step 3 and pick our target, and in this case we'll pick Salesforce. And you'll notice that it just reached across the internet, brought in all the account or the Salesforce objects, including any custom objects. And we're going to pick account. And next we can filter it. I'll skip that for now for the time, and then we map it. And many times you'll come in and the data will automatically be mapped because we'll find things that are similar or like named and auto map for you, or you can try to do it by yourself. But in this case, it's all kind of straight. It's not mapped, so we got to start doing our exercise. So we're going to pull our zip code over to our postal code. We'll bring our state to our state, and we'll bring our email address to our email, right? And notice we're just dragging and dropping. We're going to bring our address to our address, and notice my source had 2 lines, but my target has 1 placeholder, so we can drag and drop. Now this just exposed about 150 functions that I can apply to my data. And we'll bring 1 or 2 more fields over. We'll bring our country over, and let's bring our client ID in. We're going to use that as our external ID, and then we're going to let it show up as our account identifier. And then we need to bring our customer name in to the name field. And all we need to do is find our client name. Right, I can add some more fields. I'll show you very quickly all the transformation functions available. If I click inside, you'll see concat, but then you'll see 150 different functions, from trimming to checking to if conditions and whatnot. We can validate our logic. You'll see that it's all good to go. And we'll save this process now. Or before we save, I want to make this recur. I can go to my step 6. I can pick a schedule that you've built for me. Maybe we want to run this every hour, so we'll pick an hour schedule or create a new one. I can also notify someone. Maybe I want to tell Girish, hey, Girish, I'm on vacation this week. Why don't you look for this notification email in case there's a failure? Excellent. Then I can execute pre-commands and post-commands, you'll see below, and then some special Salesforce things like create the success file. As, again, Girish said, success and error. We want to keep records and troubleshoot easily. So we'll save that. Now that fell deep into my list, but as you noticed, I came in, I had a view. We're going to pop down to that view, my insurance product sync. And there's our client load 2. Let's go fire that off. Now while that's running, another thing Girish pointed out was the support cycle at Informatica. We try to make it as easy as possible, right? We have Google at our fingertips, but you'll notice we have support right in the application, and I'll just bump to it real quick. You can open up a support ticket with Informatica. You can go to that community that Girish talked about. You can go to the YouTube channel, and then you can open up the typical help. And let's go back home and see if we've loaded. And look at that. So our 21 records have loaded in. If we pop back to Salesforce, we go to our accounts, and let's see what's new this week, and let's just pop into AirPower Communications. And then we'll see AirPower Communications, all the information I have in map. Notice that I have no premium information, and I have no policy records. Now, I'm out in the field, and I want my guy to have that on his iPad, his iPhone, or his Droid when he goes in and talks to his client, the most up-to-date information. Let's make that happen. So we're going to jump back to cloud. We're going to go to our services, and we'll pick my policy load, which I have built already. Now, what's neat about this, I'm going to walk through it quickly. I'm sourcing my data, and what I brought through is my information from that policy record, but I'm also bringing the client ID. So I'm going to link all the records together that properly belong to that particular client. Next, we're going to target, and this time it's going to go to my custom policy records because I didn't have that in Salesforce when I got it. I can filter, and I can map, and you'll see in my mapping, I have a couple of different things going on in here. Here's one simple transformation case where my written premium is coming in as a string field, and it's got commas in it, and I'm just removing that, replacing that string and giving me a full number so that I can actually auto-add it when it goes into Salesforce. But the power here is I've related these things together automatically, like Girish mentioned before about external IDs, and all I need to do to relate that new policy custom object to the standard account object is build the relationship and tell Informatica Cloud about it. So I click on the Related Objects button, and I tell policy to look in the account external ID field in the account record and match it up and just drag the field over. And that's all I had to do to make this work. So I'll just drag that client ID field in, and voila, we're going to automagically map the records together. So let's cancel that out. Let's go kick that off. All right, and we'll give it one more second. And to bring this even tighter together while that runs, if I jump to my configuration tab, I have a very neat thing to link processes together called task flows. So if I jump into task flow, you'll actually see that I have a policy sync. So in here I have an insurance policy sync. So now I can load my contacts or my clients first, and then my policies, and then put them on a schedule so they're automatically always running as a package. So let's cancel out. Let's go back home. Let's see if we ran. We'll give that a second to paint the screen. We're clocking, and we're still running. It looks like. Oh no, actually, this is our auto run from before. So our policy's loaded. If we go back to Salesforce, notice there's no dollar value here. I'm just going to hit refresh my screen, and voila, check that out. We have an auto summary, and then we have all the policies related to that customer. So now, as my insurance rep is out in the field or my salesperson, they have the most current information at their fingertips automatically rolled up. And as Andrew said before, well, his customer or his account exec came into Salesforce and saw that number 0. So he was able to see that he wasn't getting paid, and that triggered a whole series of events, right? Based on, think about it, just a data integration done properly with the help of Girish and Andrew working together, and Informatica Cloud under the covers, piping that data through. All right,
fantastic, Mark. That was a 5-minute challenge, and we're at the end of our time. So thank you. I love the double voila in the demo. That was a pro-fresh demo. So can we just pop back to the slides? We're just going to wrap up and point people to a few other resources. And I just want to take a minute to thank all of you for attending, and specifically today's presenters. So we'll go to contact information. Mark mentioned that you can visit Informatica Cloud, the website.com, and get started with the trial. And here are the speakers. So thank you very much, Andrew from PSA Financial, and Girish from Silverline, and Mr. Mark Murray rocking the demo from Informatica Cloud. So with that, we will be sharing the slides and the recording with all of attendees. I'd like to thank you all for attending, and good luck with your integrations with Salesforce.
Thank you again for joining us today. This concludes today's web conference. You may now disconnect.